Well, we're going to ask Jay Randolph to start this roundtable discussion this evening with these two legends. Jay and Bob will interview them, and I'll come over and help out. Jay, your first question.
First of all, let me say how thrilled all of us who love the game are to have you two fellas here tonight. And Mr. Goalby, who lives here most of the time, except when he runs off to the desert in the cold weather, is here. I think I want to add just a little personal note before I begin. In the mid-50s, I was in the service stationed in England. And one of my buddies was a fellow who played the tour later on, Bert Weaver, and later became a tour official. And he had the newspaper one day and he said, hey, why don't we see if we get a couple days off and go down to London? Sam Snead and Ben Hogan are playing down there in the World Cup at Wentworth. We had a very amenable colonel who loved golf, and we talked him into letting us go. And I will never forget watching Gary Player, who maybe was 19, maybe 20, but I think 19, and Bobby Locke, the remarkable player from South Africa, paired with Hogan and Snead in the final round of that event. They finished second. Snead and Hogan won, and Hogan won the individual. But it was obvious to me at the time that this strong little man from South Africa was really talented. And 55, you had just turned pro. I think you won your first tournament, I believe, in 55, right, as a professional? You can talk.
Well, I won 100.
Believe me, it has been all day.
Well, I was wondering whether you still had it at 80, but maybe you're wondering whether I've still got it at 80. But no, I won a tournament and I won £100 first prize. And I was very excited just to win that £100. I mean, today it's quite interesting. I played yesterday in a tournament in Branson.
Right.
With Jack Nicklaus as a partner, over 70 division. We finished second. I won $34,000. I won my first Masters in 61, my second Masters in 74, and I get a total of 40,000 for both of them. Together, and then my third Masters I won 40, it's 80. So can you imagine you win at the age of 80, almost 80, you win 34,000. I want to show you how I walked off the last green, man. I was
Question for Nick and Gary both. You know, life is about great memories, and I'm wondering what you thought today when you drove into Belle Reef. Gary, first of all, you.
Well, winning the Open here enabled me to win the Grand Slam and to be the first modern-day player to win the Grand Slam. And Nicklaus, who I always thought was one of the greatest gentlemen I ever played with, he said to me, don't go to Greensboro, come and practice with me at St. Louis. I said, Jack, I need the money. I've got a lot of children and long trips back to South Africa and back. He said, well, if you want to win the Grand Slam, come with me. I reluctantly came, had a wonderful time here, met many of the members, had lunch with them, had dinner with them. It was a very special week, and obviously to win the Grand Slam meant so much. And I was 29, and I said to my wife, nobody will ever beat that. Nicklaus came back and won it at 26. Tiger Woods came and won it at 24. So who knows what Jordan Spieth or one of these guys might do, who never know. But when I drove in today, the only way I can say it is like you died and you've come back to heaven to come back to this wonderful place.
Very nice. Gary,
Nick,
everybody...
Let's let Nick respond to this.
Oh, yeah.
Nick, what was your reaction today when you drove in?
Well, I came back the week of September 11th in 2001 when we had the American Express tournament, and I was so excited to come back to a golf course in a place where it was really a springboard for me to my second part of my career. The first part of my career, I was very much a journeyman, and so I have wonderful memories of coming here, and I was so looking forward to playing, and I was playing well in 01, and then of course the tournament was cancelled, which was the appropriate thing and the correct thing to do. So coming back today, it was really nice, especially to be here with Gary. And over the years, I came here and played in Hale Irwin's Children's Hospital outing, I think probably about 12 or 13 years in a row. First time I met Bob sitting next to me, and Jay. We played at Old Warson, so sort of really was familiar with St. Louis and not Belle Reve, but it was always a great feeling to come back to a place where you've had success.
Mr. Goalby, do you have any thoughts about these two guys?
Well,
Sure
I
you
certainly
do.
Because first of all, I played a couple of hundred rounds with Gary, and not that many with Nick, because he came along quite a bit after Gary and myself. But I did play the match before, the round before the Masters, where he shot 63 the next day. Neither one of us had that kind of a day the first day, but he came back with a 63. And he's always been a marvelous driver of the golf ball and a good putter. And I wonder sometimes, I thought he was going to be a superstar on the Champions Tour, but he's had some ailments with his elbow and something with his back, so you never know what's going to happen to you in golf. You get a little injury and it affects your swing completely. Gary Player, I can't say enough nice things about him. He's been my friend since 1957, and I got to tell you one quick story about him. The Masters dinner one year, excuse me. I'm talking there a few guys, and behind me was Palmer and Player and Byron Nelson and Jackie Burke and someone else. And I don't remember who it was. I wasn't in the conversation, but every year Snead would come through the French doors where we're having this dinner, and he'd kick the door jamb, about 6'8" door. And he was like 80 years old, and he kicked this damn top of this door. He could still do it. And this one year he came there, and everybody would clap when he'd do it. This one year he came, and he went about halfway with his foot, and he said, "Ooh, the old man can't do it anymore." And I heard Gary behind me. He said, "Mon, I never thought I'd see the day when the great Sambo couldn't kick that door jam. I just don't believe it." And Palmer said, "I bet you 200, Gary, that he can still kick it." So they both threw 200 on the floor, and Palmer said, "Sam, are you pulling our leg, or can't you kick it anymore?" And he went back out the French doors, came back, he kicked it just like I'm raising my hand. I know to this day that Palmer and Snead split that 200 out there.
I'm going to defend myself and tell you a little story about him, because I played a lot with him. He's a damn good-looking guy now, and he's 87 or 86. But when he played, I promise you, all the girls, I wanted to play with him every week, because, man, he had the best-looking chicks you ever saw walking around him. I don't know if you've ever seen Nadal, but Nadal irritates me. I love him as a tennis player, but before he plays, he goes. I mean, it drives me nuts. And this man, before he played, he had a habit of doing this as well. And man, I don't know whether the chicks like that or not, but boy. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say I grew up with Nicky, and really, Nicky is one of the greatest gentlemen golf has ever had. And if we can have all the young guys playing the tour today, if they can emulate him. I never saw him throw a club. I never saw him spit on the green. I never heard him swear on the golf course. If we can have him follow in his footsteps, and with Bob, we're going to have a great lot of young guys coming up.
Yes, very true. Gary,
you said today you didn't want Nick driving in St. Louis or in this country, didn't you?
Say that again?
You didn't want Nick driving in a car.
He couldn't even drive a golf cart. Never mind a car.
You said you give him the wrong side. Right?
He always got in the wrong side. That's natural when you're in the country and you're out in another country. That's a natural thing. But driving on the right side of the road, I mean, I never drove for the first week I was here. I'd always go up the wrong side of the road. Some guy would be swearing at me, But talking about driving, I see Butch Beard yesterday. Now, Butch Beard played the tour with us, and he had the worst stutter you ever heard in your life. So yesterday, there's a guy doing a survey there, and Butch Beard, his bag, is standing there, and this guy comes and he says, he didn't know Butch Beard. He said, what's your name, sir? And Butch goes, "Buh, buh, 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 buh." He says, damn it, can't you see my name's on the bag? There's a gas station across the road where we're playing. Now, Butch stutters like crazy. And you know, today, road rage, they shoot you. They take the gun out and they shoot you. So you've got to be very careful what you do. So he goes, he says, Gary, I'm going to fill my car up with gas. And I put the window down and the gas attendant says, can I help you? Butch says, I put the window up and got the hell out of there.
Gary.
That reminds me of a story, Jay,
Yeah.
real quick with Gary.
No?
In 1958, he won the Kentucky Derby Open at Seneca Park. It was a public course, and went a lot of rocks and a lot of weeds and a lot of stuff. And Gary won this tournament. Paul Harney, another pro, was going home, and he had a new Cadillac, and we were going to play the next week at Lafayette, Oakbourne Country Club, Lafayette, Louisiana. So he asked Gary if he'd drive his car down there, and Gary had his family with him, and he's got this brand new Cadillac. And Gary, you tell us what happened.
Well, I was very disenchanted. I thought, this great Cadillac, I never dreamt of having a Cadillac. And he asks me, of all people, will I drive it across the country? I reluctantly said yes. We left the hotel. I had never seen clover leaves in South Africa at that stage of any note. Anyway, I drove around and I came right back to the hotel. The guy said, try to tell me again. And this is no kidding. I drove around and got right back. He says, how the hell are you going to reach Lafayette if you can't even get on the highway? Anyway, I get going and it starts to rain, and the windscreen wipers, we call them windshield, you call them windshield wipers. I've switched them off, they don't go off. So I get and I take my shoelace and I tie them together and stop it. Now, this is no kidding. Now we get going, and now the damn hood, we call it the bonnet. The hood comes up like this. And now I've got my first alligator skin belt. I've won the tournament. I get out and I tie this beautiful belt around the thing into that little grill there. And now we get going and we get stuck in the mud. I said to my wife, this is the last car I ever want to have in my life. When I got there, I said, Paul, here's your car. Have it. Don't ever ask me to chauffeur again. But I mean, what an experience. I mean, I don't know how many days it took us to get there. We needed a seeing eye dog and a compass.
Gary, when you won here at Belle Reve, all of the pundits, the journalists, everybody was saying, because it was the longest open course at that time ever to be contested, the Open Championship. Belle Reve is too long for player. But you showed them.
Well, Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus were the favorites because it was the longest course at that time. But, you know, of all the victories I had, I'd have to say that was a miracle. And I'm being sincere when I say this. You know, we all have beliefs. Some of us are religious, some of us are not, and we have the freedom of choice. But I honestly believe it was a gift from God, because I had a set of clubs that I tell you was worse than hickory. They were this thick at the top, was fiberglass. It was a fishing rod company, Shakespeare. So they took the fishing rod and made a shaft. And it was that thick at the top, and at the bottom it went. And then I was clever, I knew nothing about golf clubs. I put a marble insert, and I used a Shakespeare ball with a fiberglass center in it. But man, I hold every putt I looked at it. This green didn't tell the truth. Man, I hold so many that I walked off the course, I was like this, I was bent. I hold so many. But that was, I've never been so focused in my life as I was then. I was squatting with 325 pounds the night before, and one of the famous golf architects saw me and he said in the newspaper, Gary Player will never last, he'll never win another tournament past 35 years of age. He died, and I often speak to him, and I won a tournament on the tour at 63. And I said to him, I won't tell you his name, I said, listen, I'll be up there one day, make sure there's a gym at the head, I'm the head pro, and make sure there's a nice gym with lots of weights there. And today, we've got a traveling gymnasium, skin specialists, masseurs, we've got everything, free telephone calls, we got free meals. I mean, it's just it's a dream. Only in America could that happen.
Yeah, and you have said many times, I know, and it's from the heart, that the win here and to get the Grand Slam here probably was your greatest thrill.
No, my greatest thrill, funny enough, is winning the senior Grand Slam.
Oh,
Because I'm the only one who's done that.
that's
And
true.
that was my big thrill. But you see how Kel Nagel hit that lady? That was my mother-in-law.
Nick, Nick,
And he never finished the job off.
how do you travel with this guy, Nick? By the way, what makes golfers from South Africa so good? Why are you guys as good as you are?
Oh, that's a really hard question to answer. I think, for me, my dream was to play golf in America. It was to come over here from the age of, when I first realized there was professional golf, probably when I was about 14. But I don't know. I think we grew up on such diverse golf courses. We didn't have the conditioning that you have on the golf courses today, and we learned to chip off sand and dirt. And, I think like a lot of people who grow up in outside of America, our courses just aren't as manicured. But also, it takes a lot to be driven to go to another country to succeed. And I think Gary and I were both very lucky because we were so well received when we came over here to the United States. And people were very appreciative, I think, of our demeanor on the golf course and maybe the people we were. And that was very important to me. Gary and the generation ahead of me set an example for all of us to follow. And so when it was our time in the limelight, it was really important for myself and the guys around me to carry that flag and carry the banner of golf so that we could set an example for the young guys. And I think golf is one of those unique sports where as a kid you learn to respect your opponent. You learn to not move, to talk, to replace your divots, rake your bunkers, and do all the things that other sports don't teach you. So I think that's going to keep golf in good stead for many years to come. And, I know I'm digressing here a little bit, but I just wanted to say one thing about Jordan Spieth, because I was up at Augusta and I've gotten to know him over the last 3 or 4 years. And here you have a young man who is supremely confident without being cocky and arrogant. And I think that was such a great message to the kids out there, that you don't have to have this brashness to you to show people that you're confident. And I think I was that way. I was always quietly confident, and but I think golf's in safe hands right now. So, but I'm just very grateful, as Gary is, to have had the success that we've enjoyed in this country.
Gary, you mentioned your mother, and she passed away when you were very young. Your father had a great belief in you, and I think it's fascinating the way you got to play in your first Masters. You might tell the folks how that happened.
I'd first like to enlarge on what Nicky said is so correct. As far as myself is concerned, and obviously everybody lives under different circumstances and conditions, but my mother died when I was 8, and I adored my mother. My father worked in a gold mine, actually 10,000 feet underground, for £100 a month. My brother went to war to fight with the British and the Americans at 17 years of age. My sister was at boarding school, so I had to get up at 5 every morning, make my own breakfast, go all the way into town, walk across Johannesburg, take a bus to the school, which is one of the 10 best schools in the world, let me tell you, the standard of education. And I had to come back at night, and I got back and the house was dark, and I had to cook my own food, I had my own clothes, and it did something. The adversity, you get a tremendous amount of success in life through adversity. Actually, the greatest gift that can be bestowed upon you is adversity, because it makes you appreciate things, and it enables you to have greater success than if you live up with a sense of entitlement, because none of us are entitled to a damn thing. We've got to do it the old-fashioned way that made America the great country. Family, faith, hard work. And so, and I'll tell you one thing, There's nobody that loves this country more than this man sitting there and this man sitting here. When I see them stomp on a flag and a lady wants to grab the flag and hold it dear to her heart and they arrest her instead of the people who's stomping on the damn flag, I say, well, I've seen it all.
Yeah.
So there's nobody that loves this country more than Nicky and I. I think we are proud to say, well, I have 15 American grandchildren. None of them speak English anymore, but I mean, we're very proud, very proud.
Your dad wrote a letter to Clifford Roberts.
He did. He wrote a letter and said, my son just won this big tournament in Australia with a very representative field of Americans and Australians and British and South African. And I won the South African Open. He says, is there any way you could give my son an invitation to play in your great tournament? He says, tell him to pack his bags and come over.
And you had to take up a collection.
Well, I was at a Jewish club, and this Jewish club all put some money in the hat, and my father, which I found out later, got an overdraft in the bank to help me come.
Wow. Bob Goalby, maybe an unfair question to you, but who's the best player you ever saw?
I know that.
Well, the best player I ever saw was Sam Snead. I know we talk about Nicklaus, we talk about Palmer, and we talk about Nelson, and we talk about Hogan and Tiger Woods. It looked like Tiger might be the best player in the world, but we're not so sure now. I say Snead might have been the best player in the world because he won tournaments in 6 decades, and Gary's won, I think, almost 5 decades, or maybe 6. Is it 5 or 6, Gary? 5. But my choice would be Sam Snead. He hit the golf ball better than most. Hogan was a beautiful striker of the golf ball for about 10 or 12 years, and I feel very lucky. Gary said he was lucky to be able to play with Nelson and Sargent and Hogan and Snead, and I was too. And, you know, I think that was a cross-section of pretty good players at that time. I just wish I could have played a little bit better and been a little more competitive. That's, I got to say one thing about Gary. When we started the senior tour, we had Snead and Hogan and Snead and Boris and Bolt were our catalysts. Palmer just, he could have started with us, but he said he wasn't old enough to play, but he was 50, but he wouldn't play. About a year later, he couldn't beat the kids anymore, so he finally joined us. It was a big boost. And then a couple of years later, we got Gary Player and Chichi Rodriguez, and they were both gung-ho about playing senior golf or the Champions Tour today as we know it. And they were really, really, really the big reason we got going. Gary was his great personality, which you can all see tonight. And he was gung-ho about it, and he played well, and he won tournaments, and he was gregarious, and he went to all the banquets, and he went to all the clinics, and he put on anything we asked him to do, he did. And that's one of the reasons. Then we had the Trevino and Nicklaus come along 2 years later. So we were very fortunate to get a shot of stardom every 2 or 3 years. And that's one of the reasons that the Champions Tour is still going strong after 35 years, because of fellows like Gary.
But the people of St. Louis have got to know what you and Sam Snead and Dan Sykes and Gardner Dickinson and the other guys, you actually got it started, and that it's grown into a tour where these guys can really play.
You negotiated the first TV contract for the senior tour.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But anyway,
Gary, I don't know what Nick does, but I know your regimen every day is just mind-boggling what you do to stay in shape. Describe a little bit of that. Like your 1,300 crunches, is that what I heard?
Actually, this is something that I feel very proud of because, you know, you go through life with different ambitions and goals. And my goal at the moment, I represent a lot of companies. I design a lot of golf courses at the moment. But my great dream is to get mainly the American youth who perturb me at the moment. I must say I've been absolutely excited at coming here and seeing how well behaved these young people we met here, Nicky and Bob, we were all talking about it. But there are 25% of the American youth that have obesity factor right now. Not gradually, very rapidly getting worse. In 30 years' time, 40 years' time, there'll be 100 million Americans with diabetes. So my great dream now is to speak to the young people and try and be a role model as far as your body is concerned, because your body is a holy temple. It's the greatest investment you can make in your life. If you're well, you enjoy your grandchildren. I've got 22 grandchildren. I've got to win the tournament to break even. But the fact remains is that I can do things with them. I can still run on the beach. I can still ride a horse. I can still play golf and tennis and do things with them. And there's no greater word in the world than love that you get from your family. And that's what Nicky's done. I mean, he's put golf aside a lot in his life because he and his wonderful wife, Stu, have put great emphasis on family. So I'm still very busy. But it's a very difficult thing because the schools are taking exercise out of schools instead of adding more. And I went to Capitol Hill and spoke to 17 congressmen and senators. It was like talking to this chair. They weren't interested. They're saving money and it's costing money. And so we've got to get the young people to do something for this great country. They've got to really buckle up, get a better education, and work harder at their bodies, I believe. But the mothers and fathers have got to stop feeding them crap.
Like
Gary.
bacon? Like bacon?
Yeah.
Well, I gave 3 of my last dogs bacon and they all died.
Gary, you have such a dedication to this game, to your family, to Vivian. I remember reading a story about when you were on tour with the whole family. It used to take 3 taxi cabs to carry your luggage.
Well, it took 40 hours to fly over here.
Yep.
No jets, no disposable diapers. They were crappy nappies in those days. You washed it out. Honestly, you washed them out and reused them. You stopped 4 times, 40 hours. And now you get on Delta or South African Airways and you lie back in the plane and you sleep for 15 hours, or I sleep for 12, and it's non-stop. And it's a miracle. And you hear people say, wow, this is so far. But it's really, in comparison, we're seeing miracles happen. And people fail to recognize the miracles that are happening in front of us.
Now, I've heard you say you are the most traveled human being in the history of the world.
I think so.
Except for the astronauts, maybe.
Well, no, that's a little different. But I think that's a fact. I don't know if anybody would dispute that, but if it's not, in 5 years' time, I definitely will be, God willing.
So how many miles, how many kilometers?
It's 23 million kilometers.
It's about 20 million miles, probably.
15.
15? Yeah.
I sat next to Gary on an airplane once. I was so happy. Oh, God, I'm going to sit with Gary here. And we could chat about things. I'll ask him a little bit about the game and whatever. And as the plane took off, he was like this. Slept the whole way. Slept the whole way.
Nicky says, traveling with you is like traveling on my own.
Hey, Gary, let me ask you about it. You were a great bunker player, probably one of the best or the best on the tour. I recall in 1959 at Bayshore Country Club at Miami, a public course down there, the Miami Open.
Yeah.
I think you won 2000 when you won it. But anyway, you were in a bunker about 60 yards from the green on the last fairway. I walked out. We used to all walk out and watch the guys finish in those days because we weren't in a hurry to get to the next tournament. We were driving up the street a couple of 100 miles. Anyway, he plugged this ball in the second shot in this bunker about 60 yards on an upslope. And he had to get up and down to win the tournament. He hit the damnedest blast I've ever seen, about 8 feet above the hole, little hooker to the left. He had a George Lowe mallet, and he tapped that damn thing right in the middle. Do you remember that?
I remember it very well because Arnold Palmer had his score in, and I was buried and quite a long way to go, which is the hardest trap shot in golf, and I took an 8-iron, and I went, pow, like that, and I popped it out, and of course I could get the distance, and I nearly missed the putt.
Is the equipment too good these days? I mean, the players are bigger, stronger, they're hitting it farther. Can the courses contain today's players, or do they have to make them bigger?
Nicky and I think, agree on this. I'd like to hear his opinion now as years go by, but you see, what perturbs me, we haven't even started golf yet. We're in our infancy. You've got a man like LeBron James. Think about this. These guys are seeing the longevity. I'm in my 80th year now, and I make more money than when I was a world champion. I mean, what other sport can you do that in? There's no other sport. You're all finished when you're 30, in average in every other sport. Now, Wait until the LeBron James, the Michael Jordans, the Shaq O'Neals, they're coming. They're coming to golf. They're going to hit the ball 450 yards. There's a man called Jamie Sadlowski.
Yes.
We had him at one of my outings, and I teed 10 balls up for him myself, and I designed the golf course, and I know exactly how long the practice tee was. It was 400 yards. He carried the ball into the trees with every single drive. Bubba Watson hit a drive and a gap wedge at the 13th hole at Augusta. As we sit here now, they've just bought the street, Berkman on the side of number 2, and they've bought the street on the side of number 5, as I understand. They're making the second hole 640 yards, and they're making the 5th hole 540 yards, par 4. So where are we going? Why are we wasting this money on making the golf courses longer? These people don't want to play a golf course with undulating greens and bunkers in front of the green and water in front of the green. They want to go out and enjoy themselves.
Gary, should we standardize the golf ball for the professionals?
Yes, cut it back 50 yards and stop wasting the money. They're spending hundreds of millions of dollars around the world lengthening golf courses. We're running out of water.
Yes.
Fertilizer is destroying the soil. The machinery costs a fortune. So cut the ball back for the pros 50 yards. Why spend all this money lengthening the golf courses? And let the amateurs play with what they like. We want them to enjoy it. Don't put restrictions on them. Don't let them, if they want to use the long putter, let them use it. Stop it with the pros, but don't stop people from having fun. The rounds are going down.
Yeah, the belly putter. You used the belly putter for quite a while.
Yeah, I still use it. I think just to give you an idea of what's happened is over the years, I grew up using wooden drivers, and a wooden driver is about 170, 180 cc's. The modern day driver is now 460. The driver that Gary used in his prime had about 130 gram shaft. We're now down to 50 grams in the shaft. The driver he used was probably 42 and a half, maybe 43 inches long. We're now out to about 45 and 45 and a half is what most guys on tour use. So when you add that length and you take this weight out of it, and then you've got a club head that reacts violently to the ball being, you know, you've got swing club head speeds up to about 127, 128 miles an hour now. But just imagine if you gave, all you guys are baseball fans, I know, but if you gave some of the greatest hitters in baseball over the years a titanium bat that was 2.5 times the diameter of the current wooden bat, was 4 inches longer, made out of titanium, and it was about 5 ounces lighter. You know how many pitchers would get killed?
A lot,
The
a
ball
lot.
would come back so fast at them, and all those pop fly balls would all be 450 feet out the park. So that's basically what's happened with the equipment, and people don't understand. They say, well, you know, these guys are so much fitter and they're so much stronger. I tell you what, Greg Norman was one of the strongest people I ever played golf with. Jack Nicklaus was exceptionally strong. There were so many players who were exceptionally strong, but they didn't hit the ball, you know, 380 yards. So, as Gary said, what's happened in golf is we now have added 400 or 500 yards to the length of the golf courses. 400 or 500 yards is 14 acres. How much is that going to cost, you know, to buy a golf course? How much is that going to cost to maintain a year? So instead of golf becoming cheaper for everyone to be able to play and allow more people to play, it's actually going more expensive. Yes. And that's the sad thing. We want to make the game more available to people, more people, and not restricted. And so not every golf course has the ability, like Augusta, to add 400 yards to it. And are we going to see the day where we're going to play US Opens and British Opens and PGA Championships on courses we've never heard of? I mean, one of the greatest things is to win, you know, an Open Championship at St Andrews. What happens if we can't play St Andrews anymore because the guys are driving the par fours? That's going to be a really sad day. So they've got to start peeling it back. That's the big thing. And it's not just because us old guys may be a little, you know, envious. We're sure we're envious with the money that they're making, but it's terrible when people compare the young guys to us and they say, well, they're just so much fitter and so much stronger than you. Well, I'm telling you what, Felder was strong. There were a lot of guys that were really strong when we were young.
Not kidding.
And so, you know, it's not a strength issue that much, but the equipment has helped, but it's changed the game, I think, to a degree where we really need to. And I think the USGA need to get with the manufacturers And instead of dictating to them, they need to get a committee or a board together and say, okay, guys, let's peel the game back slowly, all the equipment back over the next 10, 15 years, because the way it's headed is not the right direction.
Yeah,
Bob, you agree with that? Bob?
Yep.
no question, no question. I mean, they're not going to be we were at Augusta, the dinner this year, and Bob and I listened to Billy Payne saying, listen, guys, you must enjoy the practice tee here because it cost $100 million. He went and bought all the houses and turned it into a practice tee. Now he's going to buy the streets. I always said, well, Augusta has reached this limit. You can't go back in the streets. Well, I was wrong. He's buying the streets.
And he bought the neighborhood. He bought the neighborhood next to it for parking
It's unbelievable.
because they can. Caddies are important to you guys. Tell me a caddy story.
Well, I'm playing at Lytham St Anne's, and I've got the first African-American caddy ever to carry in the oldest major championship in the world, the British Open. And this caddy I had, Rabbit, he was the Muhammad Ali of golf, the most charismatic guy, always laughing, great personality. And I've got a 6-shot lead with 2 holes to go. And I'm not even worried about the scoreboard, and I'm playing because I'm playing so well. And I come to 18, and I said, Rabbit, can I win from here? He says, man, Ray Charles can win from here, my little guy. And then I hit my ball up against the clubhouse over the green, and I'm standing there, and only in England or Britain can this happen, and they're having drinks above my head here, man. They're dripping a few drops on my head, and I'm getting ready to play, and the secretary's got his head out the window here out of his office, and I play the shot left-handed onto the green. But I said to him during the practice rounds, I said, Rabbit, you've got to wear that badge, man. The security is very strict. He says, my little brother, don't worry about me. He says, I stick out like a fly in buttermilk.
Nick, you have a caddy story?
Oh, I have a few, but I don't know. The older caddies, they were the brutal ones when we were young, and you'd go out there, and these guys you were almost too scared to get them to carry your bag, and it was quite often that you'd say, I see Nick Price has got, instead of saying Nick Price has got Pete working for him, you'd say, oh, Pete's got Nick Price working for him this week. There was always this. But, I can't think of any offhand, but I do remember the one time a guy said to me, I said to the one caddy who was caddying for me in South Africa, and I was playing it down in Cape Town, and the wind is just howling. I mean, it's blowing, as Gary will tell you. It blows 40 miles an hour there. And so I've got this caddy, and he says to me, I said to him, he says, what do you think I should hit? He says, I don't really care what you hit, just keep it low. So many stories.
Well, go ahead, Bob.
I was going to ask both of these guys, Nick first. When you got on the Champions Tour, I'm sure you didn't realize the guys could play as well as they were playing, most of them.
Well, I'll tell you the best thing about the Champions Tour is that Curtis Strange, when I played with him the very first tournament I played, and we were paired together, and Curtis Strange, when something adverse happened to him on the golf course, this black cloud would go over his head, and you didn't go near him for 2 or 3 holes. And so I'm getting on the first hole, and Curtis 3-putts from about 20 feet and walks off the green laughing. I said, I'm going to like it out here. But it's a totally different attitude. I think the guys who hadn't had their success on the regular tour really enjoy going out there, and they drive the guys who did have success, who may not be as driven. But, that's what you need in golf, and we've got a great competitive tour out there.
Well, I said to Colin Montgomery, because he was coming out on the senior tour, and I said, wow, I said, your bank manager's going to love you. I said, you're playing so well. And so I saw him after he played his first couple. He says, my goodness me, now I appreciate what you say, how tough these guys are and how well they play. Of course, you see, again, it comes to your mindset. You now leave the tour with the young guys, and you go onto a tour with your own age, so you psychologically putt better and play better, because golf is really the mind. And but then I see these guys shooting these low scores. I couldn't believe my eyes. Orville Moody played in the one tournament, then he shot 17 under for 3 rounds. And Colin Montgomery, I was telling him about this, he says, wow, he says, I shot 68, 67, 66, and I lost by 6. These guys really, it's unbelievable how they play, and it's been very fascinating for me to see how it relates to the mind and what you believe. The attitude is so important in life. You know, so many people say, well, what happened to them, how unlucky they were. I think it's 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. The negative guys, it's always 90% what happens to them and 10% how it reacts to them. Tom Weiskopf was one of the best golfers I ever saw. And Tom and I spoke about it. I said to Tom, if you had Jack Nicklaus's mind or some of the top players' mind, you would have won so many majors, because he actually was, I think, a better player than Nicklaus. But Nicklaus had a superb mind, a Mr. Patience, unbelievable mind. But Tom Weiskopf, he said, I hate golf, I don't like golf. He didn't like signing autographs. One day he'd greet you, one day he wouldn't. And so he got out and he did the right thing. He went into golf design. But it always amazed me how he said he didn't love golf.
No, he didn't. I got to mention one story quickly. When we first got our first meeting about the senior, it was the senior tour, then champions now, but Julius Boris was there, Sam Snead, Dan Sykes, Gardner Dickinson, and myself. And when we got through, we were in Sawgrass. We got through with the meeting. We had the prospect of 2 tournaments. Now, we got to the airport at Jacksonville, and we were at the bar there having a drink before we left, and Julius is a slow-talking guy. Now, you got to remember, he played the tour for about 30 years, and he loved to drink his scotch, and he wanted a quiet room. He had 7 kids at home, and when he'd go home, it was a rat race at home, so he wanted to get back out on the tour. Now he's been retired for about 10 years, and he said, boys, it sure would be nice if we could get this senior tour going. He said, I don't care how well I play anymore, just so I play well enough to warrant leaving home. That's about what happened with the senior tour.
Ladies and gentlemen, golf's a hard game. It's a wonderful game. And I think you've had an opportunity tonight, certainly with these gentlemen here, to understand how much the game means to them, and I hope they know how much they mean to us, because certainly over the years that I was privileged to broadcast the game, they gave me so many thrills, and these are great gentlemen who have represented the game of golf so well, and thanks for being here tonight, everybody.
Thank you.